Hi guys, this is TechImp. In today's video we're gonna try and test the parts that we gathered over last few days. Basically they consist of 3 graphic cards, 2 motherboards, 1 power supply and 1 monitor, right? The power supply, it's SF450 watt. It's a modular power supply that goes in ITX cases. We're gonna test it. The current lineup that we have in front of us, which is 3 graphic cards and 2 motherboards with the monitor, that's gonna serve the purpose just to see if the parts are working or not. With the cards, we have reported from the previous owners that some of them are working, some of them don't. Some of them are actually dusty, which means cleaning will be necessary. Apparently the black one that's lying in front of us, it is XFX R7290 card that reports artifacts with the previous owner. So we're gonna have to see what actually the problem is there and if the artifacts are true or false. The motherboard in the middle, it's older generation. I believe it's around 14 to 15 years old. The reason why we're gonna test it is previous owner said it was getting very slow. So far what we can see is that the memory is actually unmatched. One is taller, one is lower stick. So we're gonna see if we have any spare to test it out and see what actually the problem is there. It came without a cooler, so we're gonna have to use some DIY from our side. The last motherboard is a newer generation. It's a socket 1150. We got it for testing with 1 stick of 8GB DDR3, which means we're gonna have to test the other, considering that motherboard is coming with 2 slots for the RAM. Not 100% sure what CPU is there, but that's why we're here and we're gonna start testing it very soon. First part here that we're gonna test is a ASRock H81DG4 motherboard, which is socket 1150. It's coming with, let's see, what is that? 8GB Corsair value memory, 16 MHz speed. So what we're gonna do is first we're gonna connect all cables and parts that are actually necessary to work and see if the board is gonna boot up. If not, that means it's either faulty or there are other parts that needs to be maybe cleaned or sorted out. We have a small power supply here. We're going to connect the 24 pin for the motherboard with 8 pin for the CPU. In this case, this motherboard is coming with only 4 pin. So it's not that bad to test it out. We have a power cord for power supply. The great part with these cords with power supplies is that they have a switch on and off. With the older ones they didn't. So that's connected. The next step that we're gonna do, we're going to try connect as many parts as we can. In this case, we're going to use our SSD to see if the board is going to post or it's going to be a problem to turn it on. We're going to connect SATA cable to the SSD. This graphic card here is XFX R7290, which was reported that it's giving artifacts. So what we're going to do is we're going to test it out and see if that's the case with the motherboard, with the graphic card, sorry. Connect the DVI. There we go. Since this is 6 pin, since this is a 6-pin graphic card, we are in need of a 6-pin cable. That cable, if it's semi-modular, power supply, it's coming in the box, so we have to attach it on one side. If it's non-modular power supply, it will automatically come for the back of the power supply. So in this case, we have a 6-pin for the graphic card. Connect them together, and we're gonna have to turn it on. In that case, we have to shorten 2 pins at the back of it to start the motherboard. Before that, turn on the power supply, of course. Okay, so the motherboard turned on. The graphic card looks like it's faulty because it's spinning on the full speed. There's nothing on the screen, which definitely indicates that the graphic card is bad. Next test that we're going to perform is going to be testing the motherboard. In case if the PCI is broken, if the CPU is broken, considering that we don't have a HDMI at the back, we're going to have to use extra graphic card because this one comes with a HDMI. We're going to plug it in, connect the monitor to the HDMI port at the back, turn on the power supply, and repeat the process again. If the motherboard turns on, there we go. This shows that the previous graphic card is faulty, which means that it will be hard to repair it no matter what you try. It means like it's out of usage. It was probably overheated because those R7 and R9 cards, this one is actually R9 270A, and I believe, yeah, it's a 2 GB version. And I believe that this graphic card was probably overheated or some sort of issue. Probably the VRAM was melted or overheated, and the card gave up. As you can see, our replacement card that we are testing, this motherboard is working. It's showing on the screen that Windows did boot up successfully, which means we don't have to be worried if the motherboard is faulty or not. The only thing is we're gonna plug in the motherboard and the keyboard just to test and see what CPU are we getting with it, because we did not take the cooler off, and see if we got lucky with the parts. This motherboard is coming with i5, not bad, i5 4570 with 8 GB single channel. That's great. We're gonna turn it off, and we're gonna put RAM in the second slot just to confirm that everything is working. To remove the RAM, there are 2 clips, top and bottom. The newer motherboards only have one, and which is located on the top. We have to open it up. This one kinda was a bit dusty. We're gonna slide it in slowly, and when it clicks, it means that the motherboards sit in the slot. There we go. Great job. We have to turn it on again. Okay, there's an issue with this part, which means there is a reason why when we got the RAM, it was actually sitting in the second slot. It's 3 beeps, which means the RAM issue. It could be because the RAM slots are actually dusty on the top. You can't see it at the moment. So we're gonna try with a different RAM and try to clean this up. The next step is to clean both slots after we remove the second stick of RAM. This time we're going to use a different stick just to confirm, is the previous one faulty in this slot, or it was just because the slot was dirty. Let's see. We clean the slot. As you can see, picture showed up. And the motherboard is working with this RAM. That means that the processor, RAM, motherboard with this graphic card that we're using for the testing is working perfect. Next, what we're going to do is we're going to take the other two graphic cards that they don't require any external power delivery, for example, like that XFX card, which required like 6-pin. So this one will be powered off the PCI slot that's actually here on the bottom, and we'll see and test it if the graphic card is working or not. This card here is reported as working card, which is HD, which is Asus actually, and it's Radeon 6670 1GB D5. Now these cards came with the DDR3 and DDR5 memory, 128-bit bus. So some of them, like by today's standards, like are not really playable, and some of them would still manage like to kick a notch like down to low-end graphically demanded games. For example, like League of Legends, or some of the even HD cards, HD like 530, 540 that was integrated in the Intel chips. So this would be kind of for the games that would be like 10 years old. We're going to test this one and see if it turns on. Alright, the fan spins. There's a picture on the screen, which means the card is working fine. Let's see. Sometimes it takes a little bit of time like for the graphic card to kick in, like considering that we're constantly changing them. So the operating system that's actually on our SSD, it's trying to find the best possible solution for the card to kick in. Alright, there's an issue with this one. It did show in the BIOS, but this time it's not showing on the screen, which means that the card could be with issue, or we're gonna have to try something else. Might happen in this case, like if the graphic card is not working properly. Again, as we saw like in the first case, like one of the slots for RAM was dirty. So what we can do is open it up, check if the slot is dirty, if maybe graphic card is dirty, reseat, and as you can see, like there is a dust flying around. So we can actually reseat everything, put it back, and see if everything got sorted. Don't forget to connect the HDMI cable, otherwise you won't get any picture on your monitor. And let's try it again. Second trying, motherboard, and that's great news. This graphic card works perfect. The only thing, of course, you're going to need now is to pull the drivers off the internet to install it fully and to be used fully. Now we're going to switch it off, and we're going to try the last card that we have, and that is ATI Radeon. I assume it's the same model number as this one. To remove the card, don't forget, like some of the older cards had a pin that you have to press or pull on one side to lift the card up, and it's removed at the moment. Now we're going to use the last card that we have here, which is 6670 2GB version. So we have two cards, just one is 1GB, one is 2GB. And we're going to test this one. This one is also a bit dusty. So we're going to test second one and see if it's working or not. The procedure is pretty much straightforward. plug it in PCIe slot, and the only one in this case in this board. Connect the HDMI cable and turn the board on. We're getting signal from the card that the card is working. Let's see if the card is going to show up in the Windows. There we go. Boot it up in Windows, no issues whatsoever. So we are actually lucky in this moment. We're getting like 2 cards out of 3 that are working, that there's no problem. The only problem that occurred with the second card was because the PCIe slot was dusty, so we have to kind of clean it up a bit. The first card was dead. Basically, like, the fans are spinning full speed, like, and fixing that kind of card like in 2020 is pointless. So it's either gonna be like as a souvenir. I know I'm joking, or donate it to someone who actually can fix it or play with it or whatever he wants to do. So we figure out the board that we have it here is working. Both RAM slots are working. CPU is working. 2 out of 3 cards are working. Power supply is working. SSD is working. Monitor is working. So we are getting there to be actually lucky with this, what we got at the moment. Now the last part that's left is one more board, which is socket 775. This board is IPIBL L, not sure is it LB or L8, 775 board. It's an older board, definitely. It came with 2 sticks of 1 GB of RAM. Like we said, this motherboard is coming with unmatched memory, which is one is 16. Just waiting for the camera to zoom in if possible. One is 800 megahertz, which is smaller stick. The second one is 666. I know, sounds weird. So we're gonna test this board to see if it's posting, if it's booting up, if there's any issues with it, and if not, we're gonna bring it back, clean it, and give it back like to the user, to its owner. If there's an issue, we're gonna have to let them know like that the motherboard is not possible to be repaired, but even for this age, I would recommend them to buy a new one. Now this socket 775 motherboard, we had to improvise a little bit. We don't have original 775 cooler, so we had to kind of like improvise with something that we had at the moment. We left everything that was originally the way how we received the board. So the way how it is, we're gonna test it. We're gonna see like if the board works, and if not, probably gonna have to throw it out or dump it, or whichever is gonna be closer. So we turn on the board. We hear the fans spinning. There's a picture on the monitor. What does it say? System fan has failed. Service PC to prevent damage to the system. Press F2 to continue. Nothing in the moment. We're gonna have to turn it off and connect the cables. This type of issue only happens when the motherboard, considering that this one came out from the HP system, that the motherboard failed to post because one of the parts is missing. In this case, it says fan failed. Luckily, we have a fan, just need to find a fan header, and usually they have them exactly here because that's the closest point like to the exhaust fan. We're going to put it here, of course on top of each other, and see if that would solve the problem. Let's turn it on and test it out. If that's going to be the problem and the second fan did solve it, okay, we have a picture, that means this board should be fine and good to go. It says CMOS date not set. This means like probably the battery is low and it needs to be replaced. Error unknown file system. This is the problem with the older boards, considering that Windows 10 is more advanced system to the timeline of where this motherboard is coming. That means that the Windows on this board has to be reinstalled, and it has to be kind of sorted out like to work properly on these type of boards. These boards like would work in a legacy mode, I assume, because all newer boards work on UEFI system, which this Windows 10 from the SSD is installed on. If we had an older hard drive that would be installed on the legacy, the system would boot fine. Now, knowing that we tested so many parts here at the moment and that only one is faulty, this is actually great success today, and we can happily say that all these parts that we had at the moment, we are happy to have them, we are happy to test them out, and hopefully bring a good news to the previous owners that actually had them. In this case, I just want to mention that both of these sticks, even if they are mismatched, they are working, which is a good news, because if it doesn't work, some of the, for example, Dell motherboards, if they are mismatched RAM or it has to be specific RAM, the system simply wouldn't boot up. It would beep, it would give you a beep codes, so you can easily diagnose what actually the issue is. But in this case, the RAM is working. That's a DDR2 RAM, which it's really now old. I'm counting like 15 years, 12 to 15 years this board is old. And it came with a HP OEM system. Thank you guys for watching again today. I hope you like it. If you do, make sure you press that like button. If not, please leave a comment down below and I will respond as soon as possible. Thank you for watching and please subscribe.